What's good, everybody? It is time for the most recent market update, all the statistical information that you know and love for what's going on with South Surrey and White Rock real estate. Now, I got some really interesting things to share with you on today's episode, and I want to make sure you hang around to the end because I'm going to show you a graph and show you some numbers that I think are really going to blow your mind and give you a different perspective on what to do with real estate, whether you've been buying, selling, or kind of planning on what you might want to do, maybe even going into next year. So let's talk a little bit about the landscape real quick too, because there has been some changes in terms of what's been going on out there. So, if you have been following along, the Bank of Canada did change its overnight lending rate just a few weeks back. So, they moved that from 2.5% down by a quarter point to 2.25%. So, if you're unfamiliar with what that is, that's the money or the rate at which, rather, they lend big banks money for. So, anybody on a variable rate mortgage or anybody who wanted to get a variable rate mortgage, things just got a little bit cheaper in the last couple of weeks for them, which is really great. Now, that doesn't necessarily affect fixed rate mortgages. However, we've also seen some good news with fixed rate mortgages as well, because they have gotten under that kind of 4% threshold, which is a big psychological barrier for a lot of people because they're just not used to paying rates that high. So those numbers now, 5-year mortgages, 3-year mortgages, at the time of filming this, are both well under that 4% mark, which is starting to have an impact on the market. You know, in these video series where we go over the market stats and whatnot, I've been kind of talking about the feet on the ground experience where we've noticed a lot more traffic, maybe coming to our showings, maybe coming into the open houses, that sort of thing. And it didn't necessarily translate into sales because we hadn't seen that resonate in the numbers quite yet. But there was definitely more people out there. Well, this month, you're going to actually see that translate into sales. You're going to see that actually translate into transactions, which is interesting because that, begs to question, well, where is the market maybe heading as of today? So we're going to get into all that for sure. And we're going to talk about those sales numbers here. So um, as a reminder, when I'm talking about prices, I am using the home price index. We're talking about benchmark prices of homes. So that's kind of like the typical home and what is the price of that home doing each and every month, specifically to South Surrey and White Rock. So I want you to think of it a little bit like inflation. Is the price going up? Is the price going down? That sort of thing. Now, what you're seeing here, if you see that big blue bar on the right-hand side there, that's the amount of listings that have came to the market or that have come onto the market in 2025 in the entire Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, which is basically North Delta all the way to Abbotsford. You can see it's one of the highest times since 1990 that we've had that many listings on the market. Now, if you look at the red bar just beside that on the very bottom right, you can see that's one of the lowest red bars on this entire chart. And what that's representing is sales. So we've got some of the highest amount of listings available and the lowest sales, which makes for a very challenging real estate market for home sellers, but a very good opportunity or opportune market for home buyers. Now, what's going on recently? Well, talking about that feet on the street thing, and there's something really cool I'm going to share with you at the end of this video. But this is the press release that came out on the 4th of November from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. And there's a couple things that I wanted to bring to your attention on it. The first one is that sales have climbed for the second straight month in October. It says a sign that some buyers may be responding to steadily easing prices. So I want you to think about something here for a moment. We are in an environment now where interest rates have come down a ton from where they were. They were up at 5% for the overnight lending rate. So we're down over 2.5% from where they were previously. But prices have also come down on most product types almost everywhere. And they've come down, by a generous amount. So what buyers out there are likely starting to recognize is there's opportunities that exist today that didn't once exist this time last year. Prices were much higher, interest rates were much higher. So there's a lot of buyers out there who are starting to strike on that opportunity because they recognize it and they don't frankly know how long it's going to be there. So sales have climbed month over month. And we're not talking about a little climb, a little step. We're not talking about like 2 or 3% sort of thing. In the Fraser Valley, it was a 17% month over month increase. And that's 17% month over month increase from the month prior, which was also a generous increase as well. Now, we're coming out of a nasty market, right? Like we're still 16% below for sales compared to where we were at this time last year. But 17% month over month, that is not a small number. That is a big jump. Now, to add to that, let's put a little more fuel on the fire sort of thing. New listings are also down in October by 14%. Again, not a little amount. So you've got listings available and you got the people that are buying them, and the people that are buying them, well, more people were buying them and there was less listings to choose from. So that is starting to even out the odds for many people. So anybody that's selling their home, things just got a little bit better. For anybody that is looking to buy a home, well, things just got maybe a little bit worse because there's a little bit less to look at. The amount of people you're competing against just got scrunched a little bit. So those are all really positive numbers from taking us back, or taking us from where the market is into taking us into a much more healthy market condition. And ideally, that's where we land and that's where things stay. No, I don't think anybody likes these yo-yo markets where prices are going like this and then they're going like this. So we'll have to see where that goes, but very, very positive numbers for the market, generally speaking. Now, this right here, before we get into the South Surrey White Rock specifically in the community, the red line on here is all product types across Greater Vancouver. You know, that's Vancouver and Burnaby, Tri-Cities, Richmond's in there, all that sort of stuff. This is all types of property. That's just generally what's happened with prices over the last 2 years. And the blue line is Fraser Valley. But let's get into some more specifics here. So condominiums. So sales to active ratio, you are floating right now in and around that 12.5% mark. So the advantage is still highly in the buyer's favor here. There's lots of inventory. You know, you've roughly got that 1 out of 7, 1 out of 8 properties coming to the market are actually transacting. So that puts downward pressure on prices. So, and that's exactly what we've seen. Now, I do find that the home price index, and what I'm showing you here is specific to condominiums in South Surrey and White Rock. I do find that this tends to trail what is actually going on in the market reality by about 2 months or so. But nonetheless, this is the data that we have to work with. So it does show a relatively large decrease month over month in terms of what has happened with condominiums from, excuse me, from the month of October and November. So month over month, they are down roughly about $12,000. And over the last year, they're down about $63,000. So what does this mean? Well, the market is highly advantageous to a buyer, of course, right? Now, as I had mentioned, we are seeing more activity. I'm actually going to show you a stat here in a moment that's going to be very, very interesting. But there is lots of people that are starting to recognize that opportunity out there. So, you know, if you're somebody that's renting a property, you need to consider what your rent is costing you each and every month. I mean, certainly if you know the general or typical property is down $62,000, renting for the last year didn't hurt you so much, but you still probably put out anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 in your rent, if not more. So you're not necessarily ahead by that full amount. And if that number changes, like what I'm showing you on the screen here, it's going to impact you much more moving forward if you continue to choose to rent. So just be very, very careful about trying to time the market. If you do need a place, there's great opportunity. There's lots of places available, and you likely have a better opportunity to negotiate a great deal now. Whereas when the sellers start feeling a little bit of optimism about what's going on the market, you're going to lose that ability to negotiate those really good deals. As I mentioned, the affordability is here. New construction is pretty quiet. Now, there is some new developments going on in and around South Surrey and White Rock. The question is whether those are actually going to sell or not. So there's also a lot of talk right now about the first-time home buyers not having to pay GST on new construction. That is still something that's being talked about by the federal government. In fact, it was in the 2025 budget that just came out as well. So they are still talking about it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, because you got to really think that's going to have a big impact on the market in a couple ways. Well, number one, that's going to cause people to obviously go towards new construction because there's no property transfer tax for qualifying home buyers in BC, and there is, eventually no GST on those properties. There's no taxes, right? That's a big, big deal. Now, you got to think, not only is that going to push people into those properties, but that's also going to push buyers away from relatively newer properties. So let's say there's a condominium or a townhouse that fits within the price thresholds there, and let's say they are built in like 2024, 2023, well, they're still relatively new, but because you're not paying any property transfer tax on new construction, which you have to pay on resale, and you don't have to pay any GST on that new construction anymore, the playing field is very, very much leveled. So those properties that are somewhat new, maybe just a couple years old, what might they have to do with their prices to be able to sell their units once that GST is removed? It's a very interesting thing to think about because that market will be impacted by that. So we've done a video about that on our YouTube channel. We've done a video about the GST stuff on our YouTube channel. So if you don't subscribe there, you definitely want to get on there and check that out and see those videos as they get released as well. And the last thing I had on here is watch for increasing sales numbers. Check this out. Look at the bottom right here. This is sales of all property types in South Surrey and White Rock over a period of time. But you can see the last couple months there, it has been a significant increase in terms of what has been transacting. And that's not a small jump. That's a pretty gnarly speed ramp up, if that makes sense. So there's definitely more people paying attention. There's definitely more people taking advantage of the opportunities right now. Townhomes just entered a balanced market condition. So they're roughly in about the 16% mark. No real advantage for either party, where we have seen the home price index show that the prices have come down month over month. And again, aggressive month for whatever reason showing on the home price index, but it's showing it's down about 28,000 month over month and year over year down about $79,000. So in a market like this, I mean, prices are down, but the current conditions are actually suggesting that there's not much of an advantage one way or the other. Anybody that lists a townhome in the area, the good ones will sell relatively quick. The ones that aren't priced well or don't show well, they'll sit and they might have to have their price adjusted. Now, this is for South Surrey and White Rock as a whole. If you're a home seller, if you're a home buyer, you're not selling a South Surrey White Rock townhome. You might be selling a Grandview townhome, which has very different characteristics, very different sales to active ratio, chances of actually transacting, what's happening with prices than maybe Ocean Park as an example. So it's really important to get that local market data, something we can certainly help you with. You can connect with us by booking a time to speak with me and my team in the description of this video. But I just want to put that out there because for all product types that we're talking about, even when we're starting to niche down into South Surrey and White Rock is a very different housing market than Crescent Beach as an example. So you really need to dig down on those and see what's going on. Nonetheless, there is still very good choice out there, and the days on market is going to start to shorten if we are in these balanced market conditions. So anybody looking to get into the townhome market out there, you might want to take advantage of it while it's still really good. Prices have continued to descend. This will be the market of movement. So it is that perfect balance of the space and the outdoor space and the finishings and the location and the price point that a lot of those millennial families that are starting to have children or maybe already do have young children need. So townhomes will continue to be likely one of the strongest sales for asset classes out there. So definitely pay attention to that. And we'll have to keep an eye on that condo market as well, because I've talked about this before, but that condo market is the first domino that knocks down the other dominoes in the sales cycle oftentimes. So when a first-time buyer buys something, they've added a new sale to the market, which now allows other people to go and transact. So we'll have to see if that starts kind of flooding into the townhome market in South Surrey as well. Talking about detached has been one of the most challenging markets, especially in South Surrey and White Rock, let alone other areas of the lower mainland. But that has seen very good improvements in the last 2 months as well. So our sales to active ratio, you can see at its low point was down at just over 5%. Now it's up at about 10%. Now that's not out of the woods yet. While that looks like a really good increase, 10% is still relatively difficult. That's 1 out of 10 homes each and every month coming to the market transacting. And don't forget those 9 homes that don't sell out of the 10 that came available. Well, they're likely still on the market, kind of building inventory, if that makes sense. So prices, well, they certainly have softened and continue to decrease in this neighborhood. And I do project that's likely going to be the case for the foreseeable future. Month over month, they're down about $24,000, and year over year, they're down about $154,000. So this is a market that's got a large advantage to the buyer. Tons of inventory to choose from. Prices will likely remain challenged unless something significant changes or happens. So shoot your shot, put your offers out there. When, just as we were saying in one of the other sessions here, like when sellers start feeling optimism about the market, you're going to lose your opportunity to negotiate really, really strong deals. So when a seller feels like the market is falling under their feet, they might be more open to having conversations about an offer that you might put out there rather than when they get a little bit more optimism and they're feeling like they don't have to kind of bend over backwards to make something work because they think somebody else will be coming along. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. If you are someone that's looking at selling your home, you can't use hope as a strategy. We don't know where this is going to head at the end of the day. I'm kind of showing you what is going on right now, generally speaking, for all these different product types and whatnot, but nobody really knows. We have a person in the world right now who can send a tweet out and change an entire economy overnight. So we'll have to continue to watch that. But hopium is not a strategy. Hoping and praying that your home is going to sell when you know that it is not showing the best it maybe could, it's not positioned the best it could be, or maybe it's not priced where it needs to be, which is usually the bigger one. That is not a strategy for getting sold. You need to be realistic about what's going on in the market today. Now, I'm going to show something really interesting with you after we get through this next slide here. But what's a couple of the market drivers? Well, we do have an interest rate announcement, another one coming up on December the 10th. Who knows what's going to happen from the Bank of Canada? We'll have to keep our eyes out and watch that. If you follow us on our Instagram channel, we'll obviously release that information right away. And our Instagram channel has a lot of stuff that you will not find on this YouTube channel that's specific and local to White Rock and South Surrey. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. We'll make sure that link is below in the description of this video. Economic shifts, pending there's no more trade videos released in the United States and we can open up conversations, maybe a trade deal gets done. Who knows? Only the people at those tables, I guess, really know what's going on. We know the demand is ultra backed up. There is a ton of people out there looking to transact real estate, looking to jump into the market. They're just waiting for the when. And there's a few signals that I've shared with you in today's video that's showing like maybe that when is now. I don't know. You'll have to make that decision for yourself, but certainly you're going to want to pay attention to those drivers. Seasonal trends, we are getting towards the end of the fall market. Typically, it will slow down going into the month of December and even into the month of January, and we'll start to see this fall market begin towards the end of January into early February, which typically will ramp up sales. Most sales happen typically in the fall market, and that usually continues right up until about June or July. So that's kind of where we're going to be at. And local policy changes, well, thank goodness our provincial government hasn't made any major changes as of right now. So we'll see if that changes, but I think they're leaving things be and letting the market do what the market should do. So now here's what I want to share with you that was interesting. I found this really interesting. We're talking a lot about sales. We're talking a lot about foot traffic, about what's been going on. The lower mainland has been hugely affected by the downturn in sales, much more so than other areas of BC. And the graph I'm showing you on the screen right here is from the British Columbia Real Estate Association. And I want to bring your attention, it runs from 2022 up to 2025, and then the forecast for 2026. Well, I want to bring your attention to the forecast on the right-hand side for 2026 and bring your attention as well to the kind of orangey yellow bar in the middle there. Well, what that's showing is what the projection is, not only for the lower mainland, for how many sales the British Columbia Real Estate Association is projecting for 2026, but the entire column there is for the entire province. Now, this is what they say. They say that they expect sales to be up by 12.8% in 2026, with prices going up about 4%. Now, that's across British Columbia. That's not specific to the lower mainland, but I'll give you a little bit of an anecdote, and then I'm going to share some more localized information with you. But 2025, the real estate community really thought that was the year of the recovery. There was actually signs that that was happening through January and February, where we had monstrous spikes in sales and prices. We'd kind of been coming off about 2 to 3 years rather, of a pretty sluggish market, which is actually longer of a down market in terms of real estate cycles in the lower mainland than we're typically used to. And that's not to say that prices were going to skyrocket necessarily. It just means that prices would likely stop going down and more sales would start happening, all that sort of stuff. Well, then the election came down south, and we all know what happened, and that's largely why we probably are where we are at today. But with that being said, how long do you go, right? Like, how long do people bury their heads? We've had prices come down, a lot more opportunity. We've had mortgage rates come down, a lot more opportunity. And as I've shown you, there are people who are starting to recognize that opportunity and all the craziness going on in the world out there. Well, people start to become immune to it and just becomes normal. And, their plans continue on because they are still having bigger families. They're still changing locations because of jobs. There's still people passing away. There's still people that need to downsize. So there is still homes transacting out there, and there's lots of people that are pent up and looking to buy them. So anyways, what I'm showing you here is the British Columbia Real Estate Association is actually projecting the bulk of the improvement to be coming out of the Lower Mainland. So when we talk about the Lower Mainland in and of itself, they're seeing a 21.7% increase in sales. That is a big jump. That is a big number that they are projecting, with a more modest increase in price of about 1.1%. But the point and the takeaway from that is there likely is going to be a lot more people paying attention to real estate. There's going to be a lot more people taking advantage of current day prices, current day mortgage rates, current day opportunity. So if you're someone that's been sitting on the fence, maybe that's enough for you to consider when you might be ready to get into the market, and how that reflects to your life rather than sitting there trying to time it. So anyways, I thought you guys might find that super useful. So anyways, let me know in the comments what you like about these. If there's anything you'd like to see differently, this is kind of a raw and unfiltered way of showing you what's really going on with the real estate market. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. This YouTube channel is heavily dedicated to the South Surrey and White Rock neighborhoods, as well as all the crazy stuff that's happening in BC real estate, even though our government's been a little bit quiet since the market's been going down. But I'm sure they've got something fun for us coming up here soon. So we'll make sure that you're up to date on all that as well. And then if you subscribe, you won't miss any of these monthly update videos as well. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.